Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are here to talk about travel innovation, and more specifically in the business travel world. So just before I introduce my fellow panelists, I just wanted to quickly have a little reflection about innovation. When you think about innovation, it's a big word. It comes with a lot of promises, but the real question is, what is it, really? It can be a concept, it can be an idea, a product, a solution. How I like to see innovation is the following way. If you can vividly remember how you used to do something and you currently do it differently, it becomes a bit vintage. This probably is innovative. Few examples that come to mind. Think about how we consume music today and how we used to consume music 10, 20, 30 years ago. A great example of digital transformation. About ideas. Today, in GCC countries, you can travel to any country just using your ID. You don't need a passport. It's the idea of Schengen visa as well. You can travel to more than 20 countries without any control at the border. So this would probably be considered as innovation, at least to me. But the real question as well is, what's the timeline of innovation? How do you define it? How do you put your finger on it? And if you think about one of the latest examples, who has never heard of ChatGPT? 1 year ago, who heard of ChatGPT? No one. Because it came out in November, and within 6 months, everyone is talking about it. So the question as well is, how fast are we supposed to adopt innovation? How can we anticipate, and how can we get ready for it? This is exactly what we're going to discuss. Today, we have 35 minutes together. So we're aiming at having an interactive session, so feel free to drop your questions. We're going to allow some time at the end, and we have a little poll for you. The first one, while I introduce our panelists, is going to be displayed in the screen. We're going to use Slido. We would need your contribution. Could you help us with keywords what innovation is to you? James, I'm just heading to you to my right. So you've seen our job titles. James is currently with IHG representing the supplier in the business value chain, more the hospitality side. Currently, Vice President Commercial, India, Middle East, and Africa. And James loves to travel. You've been to Antarctica? He has. James, could you explain to us what innovation is to you?
Good afternoon, everyone. So, for me, innovation is change, bringing a new dimension of performance.
Nice, very precise. I like that. Heading it to your right, Mohamed, our wannabe basketball player. Yeah?
Always.
Mohamed, you're representing the corporate buyer in the business travel value chain, currently at a very interesting company working with perfumes, yeah, so all day. I'm a bit jealous, sounds very nice. Firmenich, can you tell us how you see innovation?
Well, I think in my perspective, innovation is really taking an entrepreneurial approach to enhance a process, bring up a new product that can help us, and a new service. And it can be in any of the 6 fields, namely communication, energy, sustainability, security, as well as health. So if you're innovating in that perspective, it's a process, it's a product, it's a service in any of these 6 fields.
Like that, cross sectors. Jordan has his own microphone. Recently moved to the UAE, VP and Director of Plug and Play UAE, coming from San Francisco and representing the investor and the innovation side of our industry. Jordan, how do you see innovation?
Yeah, thanks for having me today. It was nice just driving down the road instead of having to fly into London to see you guys. Actually, it was Brussels. That's right. But no, innovation, in my mind, it's a mindset. You understand where you want to be and you figure out how to get there. One great example is you look at Dubai. There's so many innovations taking place here. And if you guys have data on your phones, you should Google the Toyota building in 1981 on Sheikh Zayed Road, right?
Yeah.
That was about 40 years ago. And if you fast forward, look at that photo and you'll see that that's the tallest and only building on Sheikh Zayed Road. So they had this vision, and Toyota, they realized that, hey, over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, this is going to be a massive growth area for us, and we need to be there. So they put a building there, they put people there, and now they're here, and you see all the taxis, you see all the Toyotas around here. That's like innovation, is understanding where you want to be, and you just make it happen, you go.
I love that. Dubai is a great example, actually, for that. What strikes my attention when I see the 3 biggest words, creativity, new, and improvements. This is what we're going to discuss a little bit later, because I'm keen to understand, like, innovation, is it creating new needs, or is it improving what already exists and solving problems? So the first chapter I would like to tackle together is the appetite for innovation. The business travel world sometimes can have a bit of hurdles. So we have 2 polls coming for you. The first one, we're going to display it on the screen after the word clouds, and thank you for your contribution. We would like to ask you if you agree if there is a strong appetite for innovation in the business travel and meetings industry. The poll is going to appear for you in the app, and we're going to see the result live in a second. On that, Jordan, I would like to pick your brain from an investor with your hat. What do you see? Can you explain a bit with whom you're working, and how do you sense this appetite for innovation?
Definitely. So at a high level, we work with about 550 corporations across 19 different industries. They're working with us to find technologies that they can work with, do proof of concepts, pilots that will lead to partnerships. But for travel and hospitality, we're working with corporations across the entire journey of a traveler. So anywhere from inspiration to booking, whether that be leisure or business, transportation companies, airports, airlines, alliances, distribution, and then hospitality groups. Some that we're working with specifically would be CWT in the business travel space, Flight Center Travel Group that has a large business travel division. But these guys are very, very hungry. Specifically Flight Center I can talk about because a lot of this is public, but they've made 3 acquisitions through our program over the past 5 years. And they've done a dozen proof of concepts and pilots that led to actual full-blown partnerships, and they're using these technologies. So you could be looking at itinerary management solutions or chatbots, or if you look at, March 2020, if I had to call and cancel something, like I probably would have had to wait on a phone for 5 or 6 hours to actually talk to a customer service rep. But leveraging chat solutions, or there's a company that went through our program last year that's called NLX, that completely automates 90% of the things that you would need to do if you're calling United Airlines to change your flight or anything like that. But that's a long-winded way of saying that there's a huge appetite, and I think all these corporations really want to get there, but at times they are their own beast and they are their own worst enemy, just because they're very large organizations, and sometimes if they're not set up properly to consume deal flow and ideas and proof of concepts, it's hard to move the needle on a large extent.
I like the statement, they are their own worst enemies.
Yeah, which is super rough, but it's the truth, right? They're big companies.
So in terms of appetite, we have a clear votes, like 93% agree. Mohammed, James, would you say thumbs up or thumbs down? Do you agree that there is a strong appetite? Okay. Then I have a second question and then I'll leave you alone, I swear. I have a second poll. I'm keen to talk about sometimes some hard truth. In my career, I started, it tells a bit my age, but it's okay. I started in 2010. I've been told two things when I started. Already, two players are going to disappear on that market. TMCs are at risk, and GDSs are going to disappear soon. We're in 2023, and I think it's pretty reasonable to say that those stakeholders are very well established in our value chain. So I'm talking to buyers, and Mohammed, I love in a bit to have your perspectives on that. I'm talking to suppliers. Jordan, you're also in the middle of this value chain. There is an appetite, but sometimes it's very hard to make it a reality for reasons that we're going to discuss now. But before that, I would like to launch the poll number 3. Could you tell us if to you the barrier to entry is a reality in our industry? And James, I'd like to start with you from a supplier standpoint, hospitality, like core to any travel program. Can you tell us about your experience trying to launch innovative solutions?
So I think Jordan touched on it beautifully. IHG Hotel and Resorts, we're famous for our scale. So we have 6,000 hotels around the world in 100 countries. We have 18 brands. We check in about 700,000 people a day, and then we have 350,000 employees. So clearly, in terms of a business model, we are operationally complex.
700,000 check-ins.
Correct.
Just to make sure I get that number right. We're
Correct.
talking about 50 here, yeah?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
In terms of our appetite for innovation, IHG Hotels and Resorts have been famous for it. So in the 60s, we launched the first computerized guest reservation system called Holodex. In the 80s, we launched the very first loyalty program. So it's something that's very close to our heart, but we have to recognize if we're going to do it, how do we do it on scale that benefits every single one of our 6,000 hotels?
So it's the scale that makes it hard to move at a fast pace.
It is. The scale's one piece. The second piece, and again, I think Jordan stole it, sometimes when you work in different industries, you forget what you're an expert at. So IHG Hotels and Resorts, we are hoteliers. We're in hospitality. We can run incredible hotels and delight our guests and owners. When it comes to technology, sometimes it's a good idea to look outside of the window and not in the mirror to understand who can help us unlock this potential. And we have examples of that over and over again where we've seen an opportunity and then we've moved with a technology partner. And more recently, Holodex is no longer. It was built in the 60s. We now partner with Amadeus, and that has given us cloud functionality with our reservation system.
So we have the operational part in terms of the internal structure, like the complexity of having a big house, and then your expertise. Sometimes you need to outsource that, and that could be to some extent a barrier because you don't control everything and you're dependent to some extent.
Absolutely.
Okay. Agree 71% that there is a barrier to entry. So I'd rather not say 6%. That's I like that. Mohammed, you have a huge responsibility here as being a corporate buyer. So sometimes I used to be a consultant for 7 years. Now I'm working on the supplier side. Catherine in the audience representing GBTA, who powered that session. So we talk to a lot of buyers every year. And a myth sometimes can be that corporate buyers do not want to innovate. It's very hard to talk to them. How do you defend yourself, Mohammed?
It's true. No, if I could comment at first about the appetite for innovation, what we realize is it has a lot to do with the economic changes.
Okay.
So when the economy is uncertain, what we realize is that bigger organizations with deeper pockets invest heavily into R&D because they realize with this economic uncertainty, they want to come out of it stronger. What we realize when the economy is not doing so well, that's what happens. When the economy is doing well, of course, everybody wants to innovate, everybody wants to do things, of course. Coming back to the barriers,
yeah.
I think there's a couple of things we have to keep in mind. I think the legacy of the industry still plays a role. We've been talking about NDC forever. You know, it still hasn't been launched the way we wanted it to. We're still very much attached to the GDS. In spite of us saying, you know what, it's going to go as you were mentioning. There are other barriers like us, the corporate buyers. And what happens is there's an impression that corporate buyers have that they have to have everything for free. So what happens is you come to me with an innovation. I want to prove my ROI without buying the product. But how are you going to prove your worth without me trying your product? So at the end, we're stuck in a catch-22 where I don't want to buy your product before you show me what it's worth, but only if I buy it, then I'll know what it's worth. So that's a key barrier as well. I think a third point I can add in terms of barriers, as an industry, travel, and excuse me if I'm saying this, but it's one of the least profitable industries within
margins are quite
within
low.
The margins. So you will not get the biggest appetites for innovation or people who are good at innovation that will look into this field. They're looking at it now because they've exploited many other resources, and now they're, you know, the Googles of this world and others are more keen on travel, but they weren't before.
I'd like to connect a dot here. Jordan, when you defined innovation earlier, you talked about mindset. I remember when we prepared this session, this one with Christy, I call you out, you shared something that stuck with me, is that sometimes startups or founders tend to be contacted by buyers, but without a clear vision, without a clear plan, which tends as well to be some sort of a barrier. You're representing kind of the innovators, Jordan. What is, from your vantage point, what are the barriers to entry?
On the corporate side?
Yes, or even in general in travel, what do you see?
Yeah, well, I think people are super busy, and if there aren't the right incentives and resources in place for that business user that's ultimately going to be the one running a proof of concept or a pilot, you know, nothing's going to happen. So when we work with our corporate partners, we have several asks, and one of them is that it has to be a top-down approach. If the CEO of the organization doesn't give a shit about innovation, when a startup approaches these companies, there's going to be no incentive and no resources to actually give it a fair shot. So it has to come from the top down. There also needs to be some time commitment to innovation. It should be part of someone's job, not an additional job that you give a person. But it's all about setting yourself up internally and making sure that everyone in the organization understands that innovation is a priority, and we all need to make this a priority, and we have X resources, we have X budget on an annual basis. And I know when times get tough, innovation's the first thing to slash.
Yeah.
But it's the companies that don't slash innovation and they figure out a way to continue prioritizing it through hard times. That's the ones that actually are the ones that are ahead of the pack, you know, when the recession's over with, et cetera. And if you look back to the 2008, 2009, like there were some amazing technology companies that came out of that, right? So from our perspective, this is the time for us to really roll up our sleeves and double down on the investments.
Yeah.
And I would assume and I would hope that the corporations are able to do the same. Maybe they don't have all the excess capital to do, but resources, people, you know, depending on where you are and the size of the org, you know, that's something that should be allocated to innovation at any time.
I love that, coming from the top and then having a layer of innovation at every single level. I have spoken to a few corporate buyers who are actually incentivized to drive innovation in their own program. But it's obviously not the case for all corporations. And here, Mohamed, what do you see amongst you or your peers in terms of corporate buyers? Is innovation a topic on the table, or is it something that you have to push a little bit internally?
Well, from a buyer's perspective, we have to realize that the buyer's company does not deem travel as a center of the world. For them, they have their own businesses to run.
It's not the core.
It's not their core
company.
business. Yeah. So what happens is you come up with this brilliant concept and this innovation that is just there, needs a little bit of investment, and the question is it our priority? And what happens is, what's been happening is we've had a rough time with COVID, 2 years, and now we're coming out of it, thankfully. So companies had a lot of struggle being ambidextrous, focusing on today, thinking about tomorrow. So travel for a buyer has been, let's say, on the shelf a little bit.
On the shelf.
It's been difficult to justify investments because there is no spend. There wasn't no spend. We've started now, and now I think it's the right time, as we said, to innovate, because this is when we can start asking for approvals, because we can justify the cost that goes into it.
Speaking of, so it's the right time to innovate. James, how do we identify innovation? And most of all, how are you able to identify innovation that's for you or for your business?
Identifying the need for innovation, whether you're a hotelier or whether you're in any other business, is really listening to your customer.
Listening to your customer.
You can make it as complex as you like, but the reality is innovation comes off the back of that where you see a challenge. So in our world, we did take time over COVID to reinvent our reservation system.
Okay.
We now have something called IHG Concerto. What that allows us to do is streamline the booking process on our apps, which is obviously our fastest growing channel. It sounds simple, but the amount of work that goes into doing that is truly phenomenal. And what we can do now with our guests, with our customers, if they go onto our app and they choose where they want to stay, they can start tailor-making what they want to do. And this is, of course, all powered by technology, but it's what consumers want. And the second thing consumers want is they don't want complexity.
Okay.
They want simplicity. So how do you make that simple through the booking process and make sure you reduce the number of clicks between finding the room that you want to actually booking it? So that's kind of one customer.
Okay.
The second customer IHG Hotel and Resorts have is our owners. And our owners are clearly investing in real estate. They're investing in our brands. They believe in our brands. But we want to make sure that we work as slick and as efficiently as we can with them. So the same technology also powers a dashboard for them where at real time they can see the performance of their asset, which is absolutely critical.
So make sure that what you develop has some scalability elements. Okay. Could we please display again the word clouds from the first question? I'm just keen to connect some dots here to what we're just discussing. What I would like to discuss with Jordan, Mohamed, and you, James, is sometimes we tend to think that innovation is a big shiny thing. It has to be new, it's a big thing, but sometimes it's also a little thing, but that can solve so many problems. So that's also the real question. It's what's the potential of innovation and why now? It was the word clouds. The very first question, please. Thank you. And Jordan, on that, you as an investor, how do you flare? innovation? Is it more an idea? Is it a person that you would follow? What's your tip?
Yeah, well, since we're investing like pre-seed and seed stage, a lot of these companies don't have a substantial amount of revenue and a large team yet. So when we're making these bets, we'll call it that, it's like 90% risk, right? 9 times out of 10, we're not going to make anything. But that 1% of the investments we make, we're going to make a lot of money. But when we're looking at these startups and these ideas, we're not just looking at ideas. They have to have a minimal viable product for us to work with them. But at the end of the day, we're investing in people. One example would be, there's a company called Flyer Labs. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. They became a unicorn in Q4 of 2021. They made a few acquisitions last year, but when we met these founders, there were 2 data scientists that had an algorithm and a model. It was B2C, and it was to get travelers the best airfare ticket that exists at the moment. We introduced them to a few airlines, and we said, hey, you guys need to think B2B. It's a lot easier to scale a B2B business in the travel sector than to go B2C.
Interesting.
Right? Because you're going to be competing against the Expedias, the Booking.coms of the world. And if you're a little dinky startup, you're going to have to raise a lot of cash to, acquire customers. So they started thinking B2B. They started talking to some airlines, and then they pivoted, and now they do revenue management for the aviation industry. They have a bunch of customers out here. But like I said, full circle, when we're looking at these opportunities, it's the people that we're investing in. And I think at the end of the day, like the travel industry, it's a relationship business. And you're not going to work with somebody or buy from somebody or sell to somebody that you don't want to sit in the same room with. And I think when entrepreneurs are approaching people like James in the hotel, like he wants to work with these entrepreneurs and he has to believe in what they're saying. And he's not going to take a phone call for every guy or girl who has an idea. They need to have a product that they could actually do a pilot with, not necessarily all these proof of concepts, right? So it's a lot about the people and the problem they're solving, and if it aligns with what maybe James's priorities are and their bottlenecks and things like that, if there are any. So a lot of things need to happen, but I think at the end of the day, it's about the people.
Okay.
That's it.
Nice. Mohamed, you said something similar as well when we prepared this session on how do you, as a corporate buyer in your organization, how do you identify what would be good for your program?
Yeah, I think one of the key issues that innovators, or 2 key issues or mistakes that innovators make sometimes is the prototype. Sometimes the prototyping process is not, has not been done the way it should. The other thing is when you have an innovation, you need to verify as a rule of thumb with 100 people whether that's something they want, they need, and that's whether that's something you can provide. From a company perspective, the way we keep abreast of innovations is, of course, I spent 15 years in the travel industry on the supplier side. When you move to the dark side, as they say, you need to keep abreast of what's going on. You need to keep connected with the TMCs. You need to keep connections with GBTA and the likes of GBTA. Coming to conferences like this where you network with a lot of people and you see what's new, that's key. That's something you have to do. And what you need to do also is also look at your strategy. Your strategy must not be something you write every year now. It should be something you revisit every quarter, because the amount of changes that are happening, they mandate that you look at your strategy every quarter, see what's out there, include things that are out there in your roadmap, in your plan to achieve success. You can't look at strategy every year anymore.
Can you tell us what's on your radar at the moment, for example, if it's not confidential?
Sure. I mean, what's on our radar right now is a couple of things, and I can say their name, Troop Travel. I don't know if you've, I'm not advertising for them, but I think it's one of the greatest innovations out there.
So just to maybe to remind our audience,
we invested in those guys, by the way.
So basically, Troop Travel is a tool. It's a simulating tool that tells you if you have an event that you want to organize. It tells you where exactly is the center of gravity, depending on cost, CO2 emission, jet lag, etc. So that's a key innovation that we need as a global organization. You know, I think ChatGPT is going to bring a lot into the table from a supplier.
Generative AI.
From a supplier perspective, from our perspective, you as a client, instead of forming the way you ask for something, you'll just ask for anything the way you would ask a friend. The system will understand and provide you, and that also will help the efficiency side on the vendors. So there's a lot that we see that is useful. I think predictive AI is key. You know, we need to see, according to the trends and others, you know, where our people will be going, what's the demand. I think there's a lot to do in these three areas.
That's like center list.
Very true.
James, you started, so I'm just going to loop this, close the loop on that. So from a hospitality standpoint, like, how are you looking at innovating? Do you work together as well with corporates, with corporates when you innovate? How do you define what should be on your radar?
It's a big question, that one.
It's a big question. So it was not prepared, so I'm catching a bit off guard.
I think when you see innovation work well, there's clear parameters between brainstorming, which gets all of the possibilities. The trick is distilling the one that's going to have the greatest value to your business. That is the trick. And where the mistakes happen is where there's been not enough due diligence put into what is the return on investment. So if we're going to do this for our customers or for our owners, what is going to be the return on investment? And the second piece is the longevity of the idea as well. Some people get super enthusiastic about innovation and they want to keep reinventing the wheel, but from a cost perspective, it's not viable. So anything that you touch, you've got to make sure that that has longevity as well.
I just love this because I still love how you balance creativity or improvement. Because sometimes it's not worth it to reinvent the wheel. You can fix some aspects.
A good example would be, and I touched on we were the first hotel company to launch a loyalty program. Well, last year we relaunched our loyalty program. So it was an improvement. It's not new, it's an improvement, but we did it because, again, we're listening to our guests, our loyal members, of which we have 115 million around the world. We knew that we needed to update the program, make it richer for our members, make it faster to earn the points, bring in milestones where there's an element of personalization on IHG rewards, and make sure that all of those options to our guests are available on our app and are easy to use. So you had to integrate the two.
I'd like to know who put plug and play in this word cloud. I have a little idea. I would like to tackle our last chapter. And if we look at this list, it relates to out of the box, exploration, and mindsets. Maybe I have an unpopular opinion, but I'd like to say it. I sometimes think that we lack a little bit of test and learn mentality, or even test and fail mentality in our industry. Probably because it's driven by cost savings, or because as corporate buyers, sometimes we feel obliged to deliver results. It's something very pragmatic, and it becomes sometimes challenging to be a bit adventurous. So I think we have here three excellent people representing each I would say, bit of the value chain to talk about how can we prepare and how can we set a project up for success. So I'd like to dedicate this last bit to this. And naturally, we already talked about proof of concept. We started to talk about that. But to expand that, James, since you have the microphone, can you share some tips on how can we make that successful?
I think if you want to be truly innovative, it comes down to the culture of the business.
The culture.
You can never underestimate that culture can be the biggest barrier to any innovation. And I love the expression, celebrate failure. You know, there's not many businesses that you will do something with the greatest intent that you will celebrate a spectacular failure. And it's okay. And I think leaders in the business, and kind of Jordan touched on this as well, leaders on the business need to do that, because if you have that culture, if you're looking to do something different, you will touch gold. It doesn't say you're not doing the due diligence. It just says have the bravery, which I think is in the word cloud here.
Yes, bravery, it's a good one
to
as well.
do it and celebrate spectacular failures.
I love that. It's so interesting thinking of testing and test and learn. Well, Jordan, I think you're the best one here to tackle this. Every single consumer website does A/B testing. They're constantly playing with, for example, a homepage. Where do we place this element? Where do we place that? How are users reacting? You have extensive behavioral data. And if we look at our B2B tools, they tend to be a little bit sometimes stuck in the past because we do not have that analytic capability. And still, we would really, really benefit from that. So it's just one example I wanted to tackle here. But again, to mindset, or how can we move things a little bit? What questions can we ask at the very early stages of a collaboration, or even when we're exploring a collaboration?
Yeah, I would say you need to figure out where you want to be, and then you need to figure out how you're going to get there, and then you need to figure out who's going to help you get there. Whether that be internally, I think he mentioned culture is very important, having that from the top down. And you can't really push that into a business. You have to like teach it, and it takes time. And you can't expect innovation or things like that to happen overnight. It's a long-term game. But you really got to push it, and you got to find partners. And if you look at innovation, you look at accelerators and incubators and investors and governments and et cetera, there's always people within different countries, within different cities that are trying to push the envelope with innovation. So finding partners like Plug and Play to help you along that journey.
Were you the one who put Plug and Play in the...
Yeah. No, I had to say that you guys should definitely all work with us, but no, finding partners that can help you get there. Whether that be startups, later stage tech companies, partners like Plug and Play. There's people out there that want to help you succeed. They have the tools, they have the know-how. We just hired the head of innovation from Mercedes, who led over 120 pilots over the past 10 years.
120 pilots.
And 12 of those are in the new Mercedes that you're driving today. And he joined us because he's hungry to help other corporations that aren't Mercedes get there. So that's get to where they want to go.
10% approximately of the pilot that led to something.
Which is very high. And if you think about a Mercedes vehicle, like they're only producing maybe 20% of the car. The rest are supplied by partners.
Interesting.
So the windshield, the monitors, the leather, whatever. So in order to do 120 pilots, it's not just Mercedes, it's also getting folks from their partners to engage in these joint projects. But it all started with them. So you just got to find somebody who wants to lead the charge internally, and then find the recipe, whether it be partners, resources, subject matter experts, advisors, whatever, to get you there.
Wise words.
That's a lot.
Mohamed, the corporate buyer view.
Back to the dark side.
The dark side. I didn't say that. How do we set a project up for success when we're a buyer?
Okay, so when you come to the dark side, what you really have to do is you have to have the right level of governance.
Okay.
It has to be a top-down approach. So you set the governance up, which is basically the top-level management that you have in the company. What you have to do is after proposing the idea, you need to take that and have a little more marketing internally. You have to do a little bit more marketing internally with people who are interested within the company. And different strokes for different folks, obviously. So if you're talking to a finance person, it should be all about numbers, procurement about savings, the business about the opportunity, etc. Once you do that, you take then a marketing approach, which is you segment, you target, you position your proposal in such a way that it's accepted by the person that you're talking to. And once all this is there, you distill everything in a framework that talks about the return of investment and what you're going to get out of it and how it works within your company. And the last step is to really take the innovation that you're proposing from a vendor and link it to your company's strategy, because that's where it makes sense to everyone, all the parties are aligned, and that's where it gets the buy-in.
So I'm hearing a lot of things, but one of my main takeaways that you don't innovate on your own. You need a vision, you need a team, you need to surround yourself with the right partners, and you need the right mindset. So we have about 4 minutes left. If somebody would like to ask a question, this is your chance, so feel free to raise your hands. We are nice. Oh, we have a question. Could we, oh, thank you. A microphone is gonna come to you. Just behind you, here you go. Can you tell us your name and your company, please?
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, very well.
My name is Arif. Basically, I'm a self-employed. I'm a businessman.
Can you hold it a little closer to your mouth?
Sorry, come again. Pardon me? There you go. I'm an entrepreneur, in fact. My question is to all the young people who are sitting here. They are talking about innovative things around the world, which is actually shaping the world. If somebody is doing something, their output is good, the same thing other person is doing, the result is negative, does it mean he has done something wrong in the same process? In my opinion, what I always suggest to everybody, everywhere in the world, it's the output actually who suggests, it's the innovative things, or innovative, whatever the word you call it. It's the output actually who suggests, it's the creativity, it's the development of a mind, it's something which is actually makes the results good. Am I right or not? You got my question?
I honestly can't hear you at all. And I feel so bad because you put a lot of effort into it.
Try to have the microphone close to your mouth.
Yeah, a little bit closer and just shout.
Or you can come up here.
Yeah, no.
Come on up here.
Okay, good, great. My question is, actually, whatever the people suggest about, whatever the people suggest about the results, one person is doing something, the result is good, the other person doing the same thing, the result is negative. Does it mean the other person who got the negative results is not enough innovative or creative? My always opinion in this case, it's the results who suggest the person is innovative or not. Am I right or not?
I sort of got what you were asking, and I think it's about some people have the same innovation, one person succeeds, the other doesn't.
Yeah.
I think we have to put timing into perspective. There's a lot of innovations that came that weren't timed well. And in business, if you ask anyone, there's a certain percentage of luck that always plays a role. So don't blame yourself. There's always a certain thing that doesn't work out because the timing or your luck wasn't good. But I think what the person that failed needs to do is to try again or see what has been learned out of that experience.
It could be a person thing as well, to your point as well, Jordan, about the people, the ideas, the execution. James, you want to add something?
Yeah, I love the question because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a better result. So you do need people that are going to ask the questions and be innovative in terms of what they want to do. The clever ones have already chatted to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when they're pushing their idea, they're amplifying their chances of success versus flying something solo and then hitting an early speed bump.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you. Okay, we have about a minute left. to close our panel, I would like to ask each of you, Jordan, Mohammed, James, if you have one call to action to our industry, what would it be and to whom to drive innovation?
Yeah, I gave the exact same answer in Brussels, but give us a call. My phone number is 971-50-740-2142. That's my local number, but give us a shout. We'd love to help you.
Very straightforward. Mohammed?
If you want, I can steal our company's motto for innovation. So it's really a very simple one. Try hard, fail fast, try again. I think.
You should get a tattoo with that. James, what is your call to action?
Well, I thought I had the answer, but clearly it's called Jordan. So, be brave.
My call to action is call me. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, James, Mohammed, Jordan, and thank you, GBTA, for empowering this session.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, we will be around, so feel free to come talk to our panelists. Thank you.